Obviously, we've got a game tomorrow night, and looking forward to coming back to the hump and playing in front of a home crowd. I'm obviously disappointed with our performance in Maui. Not more so with the wins and losses, but the things we talked about as far as like the three things we want to do. I thought we played harder than the other teams for the most part, but I thought the two categories we failed in, I didn't think we played tougher than the other team, and that was pretty evident by the fact that we got out-rebounded and gave up a lot of second-chance opportunities on the boards. And when you're playing against quality opponents, like Texas, North Carolina, Marquette, you can't do that. But the thing that's most concerning for me is playing smarter than the other team. We continually put ourselves in a hole by turning the ball over. I think our assist-to-turnover ratio is a negative 2 to 1. And it should be the other way around as far as like a positive 2 to 1. So I know we got a young, inexperienced team, but the worst thing you can do on offense is give the ball to the other team, and we continually have that problem. So we got to get that rectified if we're going to beat anybody that's a quality opponent. So, we're doing some things here in practice, trying to make those adjustments, but the most important thing is our guys understanding the significance of the fact that we're not giving ourselves a chance to win if we don't keep guys off the offensive glass, and we don't do a better job of taking care of the basketball.
Rick, with where you are just numbers-wise in terms of players, is it one of the more frustrating things just being able to hold guys accountable when they're not playing well and being able to sit them when you just flat out just can't?
Yeah, I not more so from our guys being defiant. I don't
No.
think our guys are out on the court being defiant or not trying to do the things that we want them to do. It's just the fact that, like, we've got guys that never played college basketball before, and they're going to make mistakes, and we don't have the opportunity to take those guys out and talk to them about their mistakes and then put them back in. I think our guys are trying to do the right thing, but you got guys out there who've never played college basketball before, and they're going to make mistakes, and they need to be taken out and get corrected and then taken back in. And whether it's from those guys being tired or unfamiliar with the situation or not knowing the scouting report, I just don't have the opportunity to take those guys out at this point in time.
Talk about getting, I guess, obviously Colin back tomorrow night.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to help from a number standpoint, too. It gives us another opportunity to sub somebody in, and I think, obviously, he's a kid that can make shots for us. He's a good passer. But, the one thing that Colin struggled with was defensive rebounding as well, too. So, he's got to come in and help us in that category. We'll be back in the same spot.
Travante said he's really getting comfortable knowing his teammates' roles and just running the offense. Have you seen that from him?
I talked to our guys. I gave Duke as a great example of guys who define their roles. You got guys that go into Duke that are McDonald's All-Americans, and they end up just becoming basically guys who set a lot of screens and go get offensive rebounds. And, like I said, that's what makes Duke so good beyond the talent and the coaching is defining roles. And, that's what we've been trying to do here these past couple of days is define roles a little bit more. And sometimes guys get their feelings hurt by knowing what their actual role is on the team. And, we just got to accept that. Do you want to be a guy who's out there taking shots, or do you want to try to help the team win?
I know you got to, obviously, we hadn't talked to all the players, but, we saw that when y'all played here last at home, talking to Fred and the younger players. You got a pretty resilient group. I mean, Travante seemed upbeat, ready to get back out there at it. I mean, is that, with a young team like that and not having many numbers, it's almost better to have young guys so they will be resilient and not absorb the losses like a bunch of seniors may
Well, yeah, that's just that's the youth and inexperience, coming out again. Guys are just ready to bounce back and play basketball. Whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, but our guys, I think for the most part, I continue to say this, have been open to being coached and playing hard. It's just some other things that those guys, they were just totally oblivious of the fact that, like, their assist-to-turnover ratio as a team and individually just blew them away. And then we went through and we added up the points, as far as, like, what we gave up on second-chance points against those teams and what we did as far as, like, points off our turnovers. And if you add those points up, like, we're right there in the basketball game on each one of them. So I just think it's a learning experience for these guys. And, the big thing is, are we going to learn from the experience out in Maui or not? Because I think guys got a chance to see, like, where we measure up against guys who are going to be playing against in SEC. And if we don't get better here before we go into SEC conference play, or even before we go out and play Providence. You know, it's going to continue to be the same picture, you know, when we go out and play quality competition.
Rick, I know you've been resistant to talk about culture change just because you didn't know what the culture was here before. But when you take the Maui trip away from Colin for an off-the-court deal, do you feel like that sent a message to the locker room if one needed to be sent that I don't care if I got to play with 4, you know, we're going to hold you accountable for stuff off the floor?
Well, I'm not trying to send a message. I'm just trying to do what's right, you know, by the team and by what we said. So, you know, whether it sends a message or not, to me, is not the result I'm looking for. I'm trying to make sure, you know, like we set some rules and standards, and guys don't live up to those rules and standards, and, you know, those are repercussions. And more so than anything, it not only hurts the individual, but it hurts the team as well, too.
Have you looked at Alcorn State months? Have you scouted them out? What
Yes,
do you
sir.
see from their team?
Well, they're a team that likes to get into the paint with dribble drive penetration, you know, and that's a big thing we struggle with sometimes as far as like not fouling and taking away driving lanes, and you know, we got to do a great job of making sure we keep those guys out of the paint with dribble drive opportunities. And then, you know, the thing that hurts us is like when guys get into the paint with dribble drive opportunities, you know, they take those shots while we're helping, and then all of a sudden we're in a help opportunity, and then guys crash the glass, and then we're at a disadvantage point as far as like trying to go get a defensive rebound.
Have you been satisfied with the progression of Gavin as teams get bigger, stronger, more athletic, you know, better in competition like Carolina and Marquette? He seemed to still be very, very competitive in the post.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that Gavin struggled with a little bit is just the length of Texas. You know, Texas had big bodies that were longer than him. You know, usually it's like one or the other. They have long guys, you know, that don't have wide bodies, or they have like, you know, big bodies that are shorter than him. They had both, you know, Texas did. And, you know, he got an opportunity a couple times where he got a shot blocked. But we just had to teach him, like, you can't just, like, go over guys like that. You have to make a post move and go around them. So, you know, like, we showed him a lot of tape and things that we want him to work on. But I'm really pleased with Gavin's progress. He hasn't backed down from anybody. You know, he's a guy who wants the ball in the post, and when he gets the ball in the post, attacks the paint.
What's the message to Wendell after Maui? He struggled a little bit against some of these guys, and obviously you have a guy like Gavin there that's developing, and people are really looking at to the future.
Well, I don't know if there's a message to Wendell, but, like, I think it's pretty obvious that, you know, he's got to step up his play. You know, like, I think against Texas he was 1 of 8 from the field and had several shots blocked, you know, on scoring opportunities. And, you know, like, Wendell's got to finish those plays for us because they're point-blank opportunities that you don't get a lot in a game of basketball. So, you know, I'm not trying to send a message to Wendell or anything like that, but I think, you know, just from the young man looking at his own performance, he knows he's got to be better than that as far as, like, finishing around the basket for us.
When did you start feeling sick, by the way, from Maui?
I think it was right after our first game. It's basically a bug. My son was sick the first day out there, then my mother-in-law got sick, and I think it passed on to me. So it's just,
when you start getting sick, obviously you probably don't want to be around the team, you know, spitting in their face, yelling in their face, or whatever, you know what I mean, so you can't get them sick. Were there some legitimate concerns there, like if I get a guy or two sick, I might not have 5 guys by the end of this tournament?
yeah. Well, I was concerned just about coaching the team in the second game. I was really feeling bad, and I was concerned about, like, I'd been throwing up all night and all morning and couldn't keep anything down. So I was more concerned about being able to coach, you know, the whole game. But I got through it fine, and I told the team, like, don't take it bad if I'm not in the huddles as much or, like, you know, around you guys. I just don't want to make sure you get you guys sick. That's the worst thing, you know, that could happen. So they understood that, and I don't think they were, you know, concerned about me not being in the huddle and all things like that. I think they kind of liked it.
Did it limit you from what you were able to do communication-wise with them as far as teaching them some things during the game, but it seemed to be okay?
No, my assistants are so
Yeah.
good and so knowledgeable about the game of basketball, and, you know, we've been together here, you know, through practice, and they pretty much know what I want. And obviously, you know, this coach that has the scout probably has a little bit more knowledge about detailed information throughout the course of the game than even I have. So, like, you know, I don't think it was a concern because I think our staff is pretty good.
You talked about Ware and Lewis a while ago. I mean, the way Ware is developing and Lewis struggling, do you see the freshmen at some point get a shot at cracking the starting lineup?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it's such a long season, and I don't get too wrapped up in starting lineups and things like that because, you know, guys are going to play. You like if Wendell starts and Gavin comes off the bench, Gavin's still going to play a lot of minutes, and vice versa if Gavin starts and Wendell comes off the bench. There are only two centers. They're going to play.
Rick, could you give us an analysis on your early signees, maybe starting with Falou?
Yeah, I guess I haven't had a chance to talk about those guys publicly since we got back here in Maui. Falou was our number one target at that position. It was a long, drawn-out recruiting process, and it came to fruition and paid off for us. Really ecstatic because we wanted somebody with a long, athletic body that was a little different than Gavin. We thought Falou would be a guy that could be really active on the offensive glass, could really run the court, but it just gives us a guy that's just different than Gavin as far as like having a long body, a guy who can transition from end to end pretty well. I think he has a wealth of talent. Obviously, he's got to continue to develop as a basketball player, but I think with all big guys, the number one thing that you have to have is you have a willingness to work. And if you don't have that willingness to work, then you're not going to get better. Very rarely do you get any, college basketball player coming in as a center, that's already developed. Those guys are your one and done guys. But if you got a guy who is willing to work, I think that's the most important thing. And Falou definitely has a willingness to work. So I'm really ecstatic about, the way that worked out for us as far as like getting Falou. I just call him Q, but Quantel is a kid that I think is probably one of the most talented junior college kids in the nation. He continues that thing that I'm looking for as far as like having a four-man who can do a whole bunch of different things, that has versatility. He can shoot the basketball from three, he can penetrate, he can post up. He's a really good passer. So I was just really ecstatic about us getting a chance to sign him. And obviously me already knowing the kid from his background and being in Kansas City, and then just knowing the junior college coach and knowing the area, it really paid off for us. I think he's a guy who upgrades our talent immensely right away. Travis Daniels is a kid that, I'm really happy about signing. First and foremost, he's a really versatile kid. He gives us a big wing. We don't have that big wing in our program at this point in time. I think we have some talented guys at the wing position. We don't have a guy who's 6'7" that can go out and play against SEC athletes and match up against them and still be that perimeter guy. I think a lot of times when kids come in, they're 6'7", and they end up they're 4. I think where Travis is, 6'7", he's a legitimate, like perimeter guy. So I think he's going to bring a lot of versatility to our team. I think he can shoot the basketball. I think he rebounds well for his position. I think he can dribble. I think he can pass it. So I'm excited about him. And then the kid that's been, committed to it for a long time, I think he's going to change the program. I think IJ is a prototypical point guard. He's a kid that's going to be a defensive pest, on the other end as far as like getting up and jamming the basketball the way I really want to jam the basketball 94 feet. I think he's a true point guard who can come down and set up your team. But I think more importantly, like when we get the ball in transition, he's a great decision maker that can go in and penetrate and make plays and make the whole team better because he can find open people. So I think it's very rare that you have a situation where you go out and you get your number one guy at each position. And I think we went out and got our number one guy at each position. And I know from a standpoint as far as like stars and top 100 guys and things like that, that it may not seem like this is a great recruiting class, but I know what I saw with my own eyes, and I know what I wanted in my program. And for us to go out and get the guys that we identified, I think is a true testament to what our assistant coaches did as far as like identifying guys that are good for our program and what we needed. So I just want to make sure I don't go by without, signifying what a great job at West, Chris and George did as far as accumulating this class. So I'm really happy about it.